Good morning. I have a brief from the chairman to summarize 3 years' work in about 10 minutes. I think that's right, Michael. I will do my best, and it's a good challenge. What I wanted to talk to you about was the work that U-Turn has done around transport collaboration in the grocery industry, with a particular focus on the supermarket e-commerce market. In one particular area of the U-Turn project, we undertook a pilot and study in London, and myself, I work for LCP, Bearing Point, and Cranfield University were the lead partners on that. I want to try to focus briefly on the way that data was used to understand what the opportunities might be in the future. So what I'm hoping to achieve is to give you a background as to why we studied this particular market, to talk to you about how we use data to understand it, and then project what collaboration opportunities may exist in the future, and then to give you some of the results and outcomes of the project. So, firstly, let's just move on to some background. So it's an absolutely fascinating market to study. In the UK, the e-commerce grocery market, the grocery market is broadly static in terms of its annual growth. It rises roughly with inflation that runs at 1-2%, but the e-commerce element of that is significantly growing. And it has a great deal of impact on the amount of freight traffic that is on the roads and projected to be on the roads going forward. So it's a market that faces many challenges. For example, the amount of delivery vehicles will rise from between 10,000 to 20,000 over the course of the next few years. And the environmental impact related to that is that there will be 175 million tonnes per annum of NOx and particulates as a result of this particular industry. So major concerns on traffic impacts also from the policymakers. It's an interesting sector because, as you may know, the supermarket retail industry in the UK is extremely competitive, and it's also very, very low margin. And the retailers are using e-commerce and their online channels to attract shoppers to them, and they discount very heavily through that in order to try to achieve that. We know that we've done a lot of customer research, and we know that there are more and more people are shopping online, buying their groceries online. What's happening outside of food, where there's a very high level of e-commerce activity going on, the similar trends are now coming through into the food and drink sector. And customers, with all the different ways that we can engage with retailers and make purchases, are extremely needy, like lots of different options, like to be able to buy, purchase and collect on the same day in different places, and that's placing a great deal of pressure on the service options that are being delivered by the retailers. We've done some work understanding the different supply chain models that are feeding e-commerce. So broadly speaking, some of the retailers pick in store and then deliver locally. Some of them have dark stores, which are very similar to a store itself, but with very few people working in it, where they just undertake the picking from there. And there's also regional fulfillment centers. And depending on the level of the retailer activity, that they will use different models. We know the economics are extremely challenging. The average cost per order, the actual cost to the retailer of making a delivery, is somewhere around £21. And we know the delivery element of that is actually about £10. We know that the average charge that they ask the customer to pay is somewhere around £6. So you can see that there's a lot of money being lost in that particular marketplace. And we also know that click and collect is really the new area of investment for the retailers, a cheaper solution. So how did we use data in the study? So what we wanted to do is to try to understand the level of activity within London related to e-commerce grocery. So how big was the marketplace? Who are the key players? What level of delivery activity do they have on a daily, weekly basis? What sorts of goods are they transporting? What kind of trucks are they transporting it in? And so what we used is a synthesis of different types of data and tools in order to try to understand that picture. So firstly, as you can see at the top, we received some primary data from a couple of retailers, one fairly large and one fairly small. That gave us a calendar year of transactions at a postal sector basis, about 7 million transactions, and had information related to order size, delivery date, delivery point and postcode, where the delivery set out from, so the route origination. We also used a combination of secondary data in order to try to synthesize what we had from a primary perspective and understand and gain a better understanding of what the entire marketplace looked like across London. So, for example, we use population statistics, we use market and company reports, we used results from published surveys based on the uptake of grocery e-commerce from a consumer perspective, and we also undertook some in-house research related to consumer attitudes on online shopping. This next slide is, the message at the top is challenges and workarounds led to some unintended benefits. I think when we set out on this journey, we were hoping to be able to collect more primary data from the retailers so we could get what we thought would be a more accurate picture on the level of activity. Because of the very competitive nature of the marketplace, we had some challenges in order to gain that data. Businesses were very, very reluctant to provide us with the data that we were looking for because they were concerned about how that might be applied. And whilst we still managed to get some, our efforts to try and get more actually became very insightful. We were able to gain a much wider engagement than we perhaps anticipated with the retailers themselves. We got to understand in more detail than perhaps we anticipated the costs that they were incurring related to grocery home delivery and some of the challenges that they faced. And when I come to present our pilot that we were engaged with, really that almost came about because of the level of intensity of effort we had to put into engaging with retail stakeholders. And during that engagement with the retailers, we got much better insights on the evolution of their customer service offers going forward, particularly around click and collect, alternative forms on last mile transport, insights around their attitude towards collaboration, and insights into the current cost of the service. So once we'd used the primary and secondary data sources, we then needed to estimate the demand in London for a year across the whole market, broken down by retailer, by day, by level of activity, by postcode, and with our colleagues from Cranfield, who are simulation experts, and also our colleagues at Simplan in Germany, we undertook some Monte Carlo simulation in order to be able to understand the level of activity. From a mathematical modeling perspective, we also looked at a vehicle routing problem. We'd identified through our conversations with the retailers the opportunities for micro hubs within the supply chain, and we ran some scenarios between different retailers, which I'm going to explain to you in a minute, looking at how you could use micro hubs and what the potential benefits might be. So the slide on the left, as you see it, describes those different supply chain models which we'd understood from our dialogue with the retailers. And what we came to understand is the use of micro hubs or micro consolidation centers. There was a big opportunity within the supply chains, both from a stem mile and a last mile perspective, to be able to apply these. So we examined some proposed collaboration scenarios based on our interviews with the retailers. It's very unlikely in the UK that Tesco and Sainsbury's will ever collaborate. So what we did is we looked across probably the top 10 retailers just to try and understand and form some ideas about who may collaborate and on what basis. So you can see here, R1 was related to Morrisons and Ocado, A, Morrisons and Ocado, B, Sainsbury's and Waitrose, and so on. And the final one was a three-way collaboration that we looked at. I talked earlier about our theory that micro hubs could be useful within the supply chain. And so we also looked at three different business models. The one at the top was basically installing micro hubs between the retailer and the consumer, and these would be very locally based around residential areas. So perhaps you could imagine from that each micro hub would maybe service a locale of no more than 1 to 2 mile radius. We then had the middle one then looks at using using the micro hub as a shared retailer picking location, and the third one then, the second one looks at using micro hubs for a dedicated single retailer, and the third one looks at using micro hubs but on a shared basis with multiple retailers. And so just to summarize, there were many results. We had lots of different KPIs that we applied throughout the project to measure the results on, and these are just a snapshot of some of those. So within the last mile, there were improvements on the total travel distance with some of the models of up to 23%. There was an improvement, or let's say a reduction in the number of trucks of up to 28%. To make the same consumer deliveries in the last mile. And there was an improvement in it shouldn't say fleet utilization, it should say vehicle capacity, I believe, an improvement of up to 59% within the last mile. So some really promising results coming out of there. And from stem mileage, you can see the results and from the slide. So this is my final slide. I explained some of the challenges we had around data collection and the level of engagement we had with retailers as a result of that, understanding the opportunities for micro hubs, and eventually we developed a good community of interest with different stakeholders in the market, and came across a company called eCargo Bikes, who this week have launched a pilot with one of the retailers, Sainsbury's, delivering home delivery e-commerce, bought online goods out of Sainsbury's Streatham store, which is in South London, using bikes instead of vans. And there's a pilot going on at the moment to try to understand and measure the implications and what looked like being quite significant benefits of that. And based on the knowledge that we got from U-Turn and the work that we've done, we've been able to coach, if you like, eCargo Bikes to the guys at eCargo Bikes know lots about bikes, didn't know very much about grocery. So we were able to coach them to enable them to set up a service contract with Sainsbury's, which is hopefully favourable to them, and actually educate also the Sainsbury's people in terms of what the potential benefits might be to them of this system. So we await the results with bated breath, but certainly the early feedback is very positive.